KC Joyner said on Thursday that he thought the Eagles could go after this Falcons team, Casey. He thought that the linebackers of Atlanta could be had. We saw Ertz with a big game. We saw Sproles with a big game. And we saw Jordan Matthews in the slot with a big game. Those were all spots where you thought Philadelphia could go after them. And in the end, is that why they won the game?
Yeah, that's a big part of why. Plus, they get a 50% good blocking rate. That's that metric I have that measures run blocking effectiveness. A 50% good blocker rate, one of the best rates they've had all season long. And, in fact, I give a metric season-long-wise. Philadelphia now ranks third in the league in good blocking rate. You wouldn't think this is a powerful run-blocking team, but they are. They've been really consistent of late, and they're moving up the charts. So I think in addition to having those factors and being able to use Matthews as a power back, you add those two together, it was way too much for Atlanta.
Yeah, now let's ask you that question. You know, the offensive line really blocked well, 208 yards rushing. They really ran the ball well. Is that because Philadelphia has got good backs, good line, or is this because Atlanta is weak against the run?
I think it's a combination of both. Like I said, Philadelphia has had a very consistent run blocking, good blocking rate. I mean, they're only behind the Titans and the Cowboys in this category. I mean, that's how good they're blocking this year. They just haven't leaned on it as much as they should have, in my estimation. But they also gained 138 yards before first contact by the defense. I mean, you're not just getting good blocking, you're really keeping Atlanta off the ball. Atlanta just does not handle power teams very well. In Philadelphia, we've been criticizing the game plans, but they went after every Atlanta defensive weakness. If you guys can't handle the power running game, we're going to give you a big dose, but you guys don't have good linebackers, we're going to give you a big dose of that. You don't cover or tight ends well, give a big dose of that. So kudos for Philadelphia putting together the right kind of game plan.
So is this the kind of team they should be moving forward? Hey, we're going to run the ball right at you, and we're going to use the tight end, use the flats, the backs out of the backfield, because, quite frankly, other than Jordan Matthews, they don't have a reliable guy to go to.
They don't. I do think they should rely on Matthews, on Ryan Matthews more as their power back. I mean, we talked about last couple of weeks that did they trust him anymore? Did they want? In fact, what they say during the game that Peterson had been saying that he wants to use Sproles more often. He'd like to use him all the time, but he can't. Which is like I'm hearing that comment going, well, yeah, of course you can. He's not big enough. I mean, this is not news. This should not be news. You can't turn him into your bell cow. I'm not even sure why he tried to do it for one game, but to say, yeah, look, Matthews is our power back. Maybe not giving a playing time motivated him to run harder, so that's good. So you've got a good power running game. You've got a good power back. You've got two backs who can work out in space. You've got Matthews, who's still one of the best slot receivers in the league. And Wentz proved, not this past week, but the week before, that he can throw vertical if you'll ask him to and if you'll trust him to. So I think there's a lot of positives that Philadelphia can take from this game moving forward.
Casey, let's flip sides of the ball real quick and talk about that defense, especially at home. You talk about Atlanta coming in number one ranked offense, cutting their productivity basically in half. What did you see from Jim Schwartz and his defense?
Well, first off, they didn't give much. I mean, they only gave up 48 yards on the ground, and it was only 1.8 yards per rush before first contact. So they were shutting down the running game. And also in the vertical passing game, Ryan threw 14 passes, and he got 169 yards on vertical passes. That's where he had thrown the ball 11 or more yards downfield. That sounds like a lot, but again, he only completed 5 passes. So for the most part, they weren't hitting the big plays, and they got the one big play to Gabriel and things. But beyond that, I mean, they weren't hitting a lot of big plays for the most part, and that was something that you wondered if Philadelphia could slow Atlanta down in that sense. And I think Atlanta started to show some weaknesses that their offense, at least their passing game, it's Jones and nobody else. So if you can keep Jones in check, and he had 93 yards on vertical passes, he had 9 targets, though, so he only had just over 10 yards per target on a vertical pass. That's not a great number for somebody of his caliber. So if you can hold him in check, you can hold the Atlanta passing game in check.
You mentioned the double move by Taylor Gabriel. Now that obviously Leotis McKelvin bit seemed to bounce back from that moving forward. Is that Atlanta typically? Did they do a lot of that as far as plays that take a long time to develop? Because it seemed like the Eagles were getting to Matt Ryan with the 4-man rush, not necessarily for sacks, but getting him off his spots, speeding him up a little bit.
Yeah, Atlanta tried 8 stretch vertical passes. That's a pass that's throwing 20 or more yards downfield. Those are when you're throwing the really deep pass. You're doing double moves. You're doing corners. You're doing post. You're doing something that stretches the ball deep. if you're throwing that many stretch vertical passes in the game, it usually means that you don't want to throw that many stretch vertical passes in the game, typically speaking. Now, that would be a little bit of a high number there. So it's something that Atlanta likes to do, but I think Atlanta does like to, they're more of a, we're going to run the ball, we're going to throw big passes to Jones, and that's their offense. And I do think that they were, that they don't pass block that well, and they don't want to put up that much pressure. And I still think that Ryan, if you can put him in situations where you can get him pressured and such, he will make mistakes or make error passes. It's kind of been a modus operandi for him all the way back to his Boston College days. You can rattle the guy.
KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider here, looking at the matchups in that Eagles-Falcons game. And one area, you look at the Eagles' defensive front, and, a lot of those plays slow developing, and they were able to kind of disrupt Matt Ryan. But in that secondary, were you impressed with the Eagles secondary with Jalen Mills, Carroll out, McKelvin on a bad wheel? I mean, the fact that they only gave up 15 points with that secondary, what does that say about the game plan Jim Schwartz had?
I do think that they were able to confuse Atlanta, and I do think that, again, they were able to show that Atlanta. We talk about Philadelphia for years. We've been talking about Philadelphia being a team that does not have a plan B. That if you can get them out of their plan A, they just don't have another option to go to. I think they exposed Atlanta for being a team that has that same weakness because we talk about the pass rush. They did get 6 quarterback hits. That's good. That's a really good number. They got 2 sacks. That's a good number. But again, it's not you're not disrupting the passing game that much on those plays. And again, Atlanta was able to hit some deep passes. It's just they weren't able to be consistent enough with it. So I think it was a matter of disrupting individual plays and saying, okay, fine, you're going to catch us in coverage sometimes. You're going to get us to make a mistake here or there, but we're going to disrupt enough plays to where you're not going to be able to just be consistent. I think it showed an aggressiveness that was able to mask some of the personnel weaknesses. I don't know if you can do that all the time, but it sure worked against an offense that was one-dimensional.
Casey, moving forward, have the Eagles established an identity? We're 10 weeks in, and do we have a better idea now of who they are?
I think that I think it's who they can be. I don't know if it's who they're definitely going to be, but I think it's who they can be. I'm looking at the power rushing game, though. The problem that they have, they were able to get that power rushing game going, but you're playing Seattle next week and then Green Bay the next, and both of those defenses have been good against the run for most of the year. They've had their moments, but they've been good against the run most of the year. After that, you've got Washington, you've got Baltimore, another team that's really good against the run. Dallas has been good against the run for most of the year. So you've got some matchups where they're not going to be able to go quite as much to the power rushing game, but I think they still need to try and establish it, and I still think they've got to use a lot of the slot passing things, go with their strengths, because if you just, as they have in previous games, if you just say we're not going to go to a power rushing game, we're going to go to something else, you're automatically ceding that part of your game and saying we're just not going to do that. You can't do that. You have to make these teams force these issues. So I want to see them lean on that 44% good blocking rate more often and check it, see if these defenses are as strong as they think they are, not just say, oh, well, these are strong rush defenses, we'll do something else.
Have you given up on the DGB Nelson Aguilar combo?
You should.
I can't imagine how you couldn't. I think that you can find places for Aguilar. Yeah, I've pretty much given up on him entirely. Although I'll say this: Aguilar, Sands next week has got a really tough matchup. 3 of the next 4 games, he has a matchup against what I call a green-rated cornerback, which is a really favorable matchup against the quarterback. So whoever they put in their flanker spot, if they can. If they don't have Aguilar there, if they want to try Green Beckham at that spot, whoever they can do that, they've got some matchups there that they could exploit. So it might be a situation where, it's not going to happen in Week 11, maybe weeks 12 through 15, they might be able to get more production out of that position.
KC Joyner is with us here. Eagles beat the Falcons, and now they'll move ahead to Seattle. We'll preview that game a little deeper on Thursday's show with Casey, but I want to jump into the NFC East now. We did a lot of NFC East conversation earlier in the show. Giants won last night. They're 6-3. They've got the Bears and the Browns coming up. Do the Giants look like a playoff team to you? What did you see from that game last night from New York?
I still don't trust their rushing attack, but they have. I can see that Cleveland allowed 200 or more rushing yards, I believe, in 3 of the last 4 games, and they've got probably the worst rush defense in the league. So Giants will be able to run the ball against them, and Chicago's really banged up, so I think they'll do well there. But after that, the Giants have Pittsburgh, they have Dallas, they have Detroit, then they're at Philly on a Thursday, and then they've got Washington. I mean, so they've got these 2 cream puffs. They better win both those games because I don't think they have any room for error after that.
And you mentioned the Redskins there, Casey. They handled their business as well. Everybody did in the NFC East, but the Redskins take care of the free-falling Vikings. even without Deshaun Jackson, Trent Williams suspended. What do you see from the Redskins moving forward in the playoff hunt?
I wasn't too impressed with their running game. They didn't go with Kelly, and he got, I think it was 92 yards on 21 carries. So it was a plodding performance. And here's the thing: they've got, for the next 5 games, are against defenses that I have rated as red-rated rush defenses, meaning they're defenses or matchups that you want to avoid. So, you're talking, I don't think they're going to be able to keep that rushing game going or keep the rushing game being very productive. And if they can't keep their rushing game productive, I mean, their passing attack is still, I don't trust Kirk Cousins to win games. And Crowder's been a terrific surprise this year, but Garcon is what he is. Jackson's banged up. And and their tight end has been banged up too. Reed has, so maybe Reed steps up and things, but they're going to have to lean on the passing game more because I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball the next 4 weeks.
Philly, New York, Washington. If 2 NFC East teams get in, who do you like the best, Casey?
If Philadelphia will stick to this game plan that they did the last couple of weeks, where they'll let Wentz throw vertical passes when the situation calls for it, and they'll power run the football, if they will do that, I like their chances a lot. I think they can. I think they could be the top of those teams, and I think probably the Giants are probably ahead of Washington because I like Washington's schedule less than I like the Giants' schedule.
All right, we'll take a look at some of the NFL Week 10 news and notes here, get Casey's quick opinions on some of these interesting stories as we've gotten closer to Thanksgiving Day, which is really kind of the pivot point of the season in the NFL. It's kind of Christmas Day in the NBA. You get that feeling of, all right, now they really start to matter. Should we bail on Minnesota?
I think it might be time. I think they can't run the ball very well. They've been at the bottom or near the bottom of the league in good blocking rate all season long. They've started to get some coverage issues. Their defense isn't playing quite as well. Their passing game hasn't developed. I just think they've got too many problems at this point of the season to be able to correct enough of them to turn the ship around. Maybe they qualify for the number 6 spot if they get things turned around enough, but I think it's going to be a rocky ride for them.
Is it time to bail on Green Bay?
Yeah, they've got way too many injuries, and mind you, they've play called around their vertical passing weaknesses, but you can only do so much of that. There's a limit to how far you can go with that type of play calling, so I think it's going to catch up to them too. I think they're going to have a tough rest of the season.
Arizona, you bailing on them or you hanging on?
Hanging on. That rushing attack, David Johnson's great, and in weeks 13, 14, and 15, they face green-rated rushing defenses. Imagine what Johnson's upside is going to be over that kind of a stretch, so they're going to be able to lean on him and close the season out strong.
Should we give up on Carolina?
Yeah, I think it's mind you, they play in a division. Atlanta could collapse because they did last year, and it's possible. And Carolina has some favorable matchups coming up. But as far as the running game goes, but look, they've got to try and get in a shootout with New Orleans. They got to play at Oakland. They got to play at Seattle. They got to play at Washington. Tampa Bay's played better. They got to close out the season with them. I just think there are too many tough matchups for them.
How about Detroit, Casey? 5-4 Detroit.
I'm originally from Michigan, and so a lot of my Michigander friends really want to see that they're going to do well. They've got Jacksonville this week, so they likely win that, but then they've got Minnesota. They've got a away game at New Orleans. They've got to face the Giants away. They've got Dallas away. I mean, they've got a lot of tough matches in front of them, so I just don't think they're consistent enough to. I think it's good. Again, they maybe get number 6, but I can't see them any more than that.
Do you see Tennessee is for real?
Yes, they lead the league in good blocking rate. They've been leading the league for a while. Russ Grimm, their offensive line coach, he should have hands down the assistant coach of the year because Tennessee was last in the league in 2015 in good blocking rate, and now they're first this year. And you add that to what Mariota's his development and things. I think that's a team that could really play well down the stretch.
Miami, for real?
I'm in Florida now, so again, the local people like to think so. They've got Los Angeles this coming week. They've got San Francisco. They've got a matchup against Baltimore. They've got the Jets. The schedule is favorable enough to allow them to run that kind of stretch. I still don't trust Tannehill very much, though. And Ajayi, if Ajayi hits the wall, and I know Williams did well this past week, but I think if Ajayi hits the wall, they're going to have a problem. So it's going to be how Ajayi and Tannehill do down the stretch.
Casey, real quick, I got to rewind because in the NFC North, you said give up on Minnesota, give up on Green Bay. You don't trust Detroit. We're not picking Chicago, so you got to pick one.
That's a good point.
If I'm stuck with picking one, I guess I'll go with my Michigan roots and pick Detroit because I think they're playing better than the other two teams. But I think it's going to be whatever team whoever team wins that division. If they happen to get the wild card too, and I don't think they will. If they get two teams, I think they both lose in the wild card day. And they get one again, they lose in the wild card. I think the division's going nowhere.
Yeah, that looks like an 8-8. That one has 8-8 written all over it. A couple quick ones here, KC Joyner. How about Atlanta? I mean, they lose. They were 6-3. Everyone's feeling good. How about now?
I think that they've got issues. You look at their schedule. They've got Arizona in Week 12 on a bye this week. They got Arizona in Week 12. They got Kansas City. They've got a game at Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is playing well in a lot of ways. Actually, it's not a gimme game. Yeah. Then they got San Francisco. They play at Carolina. Carolina will step up for that. They got a home game against New Orleans, and that could be a shootout game. So I think you're going to see a couple 3 losses there, and then I would be surprised to see them fumble down the stretch like they did. Maybe not as bad as last year, but something along those lines. I don't see this team playing well going into the end of the season.
Jared Goff, right time?
You have to. Up until a couple weeks ago, Case Keenum was in the top 10 in vertical yards per attempt. So he was doing quite well, and you had to keep him out there because you wouldn't expect Goff to do that. But it is the right time because of how bad Keenum has played. I'll say this, though. Over the course of his 3 seasons, Jared Goff ranked 41st among Power 5 quarterbacks in vertical passing, in vertical yards per attempt. So he did better his last season, but he's not been a vertical passer, so I'm not sure he's going to solve their problems.
Who wins the game next, Cleveland or San Fran?
San Francisco, because they have more weapons. I can't see Cleveland winning. I could see San Francisco winning a shootout game if Kaepernick and Harrison, if they start throwing passes to Smith. I just can't see Cleveland. I mean, look at Cleveland. They got Pittsburgh twice. They play at Buffalo. They play the Giants. They've got San Diego. I mean, they don't have any cream puff games. I think Cleveland's going to go 16.
2 more quick ones. Time to bail on Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think they're going to have they'll have problems down the stretch because they've got a tough schedule, and you're seeing that they're not able to get around a lot of their weaknesses. So I think that's just I don't think it's time to bail on Marvin Lewis, but the way they played right now, I don't think that given the schedule they're going to turn things around.
Who's the best team in the AFC West?
That would be the Oakland Raiders because they can win games in more ways than any of the other teams. Denver has to play with a certain type of game. Kansas City has to play with a certain type of game. San Diego, there are a lot of games they can't win, period. Oakland could beat you if they had to run the ball, pass the ball, big play defense, special teams. They can win in so many ways. All
right, KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash. He'll be back on Thursday as we preview Week 11 in the NFL, and of course at KC Joyner TFS on Twitter, but KC also WWE on ESPN, and you've got a very cool article coming out. That's why you weren't on the show yesterday. Yeah, I was actually over. I live about 30 minutes away from the WWE East Performance Center. That's their training facility. It's over just outside of Winter Park, Florida. And they had what amounts to a WWE fantasy camp yesterday, where they had people from across the country who came down there to do a whole fantasy camp where they did a faux wrestling show, and we all got to participate. I got to be the heel manager in the main event, and it's going to be doing it. Yeah, it was fun. And are you a classy Freddie Blassie kind of guy? I was sort of like that. I'll give a quick note. My team cheated to win, and then we got called back into the ring. Somebody pointed out, "No, you cheated," and things. And of course, I was complaining the whole way. No, we got the 3 count. And so,
did you use a cane or a megaphone like the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart?
I didn't do that. I wasn't able to interfere in the match like that. They didn't want us taking any bumps or anything of that nature. But I was in the corner telling my guys, cut the ring off. So we had a lot of fun with that. We're going to be talking a lot about, too, by the way, the fans who were there that they brought in from across the country. It's going to be fun to tell their stories because a lot of fans had a lot of fun because people were being ring announcers, or people were being managers. They had us do ring entrances and record promos and things. So it was a really fun day, and I'm going to be doing an article on it. Probably goes up next week on ESPN.com, and there'll be a full in-depth feature that probably shows some video and pictures and all that stuff. So really cool. Check that out at WWE on ESPN. KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, pal.